It's something the Alberta Premier has long called for. Now a deal between the federal Liberal government and the province on energy looks to be nearing completion. And it's likely to include details on a proposed oil pipeline stretching to the BC coast. The news of this potential agreement coming earlier this afternoon from a senior government source. CBC's Olivia Stefanovich joins us now. And Olivia, could this mean there will be that oil pipeline from Alberta to BC that Danielle Smith has been asking for?
Well, Ian, it's a possibility, but shovels aren't hitting the ground just yet. There's a lot of work to do. This is a situation where Ottawa and Alberta are in negotiations led by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's office and the Prime Minister's office, and they've been speaking, Ian, since June, working on a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, to create the conditions in which a new oil pipeline can be viable. Remember, for a long time now, Alberta has complained that Ottawa has too many restrictions in place preventing a new project like this from going forward, pointing the blame at the Liberal government, particularly that led by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, under the new Prime Minister, the new Liberal Prime Minister, Mark Carney, he signaled that he wants to do a reset with Alberta. So he's involved with these discussions. And as part of these discussions that are underway, Ian, we've learned from a senior government official that one of the things on the table that Ottawa is considering is possibly an exemption to the oil tanker ban, which would mean for at least some time Ottawa would allow, under this exemption if it goes forward, oil tankers from the BC's northern coast to flow and ship oil from the northern coast all the way to Asia. And there's a problem here because the BC government is against this. It recently signed a declaration, actually, with coastal First Nations urging Ottawa, asking Ottawa to uphold this ban. And asked today about the situation, the province says it hasn't changed its mind on this.
Premier has been very clear to Ottawa. Coastal First Nations have been pretty clear to Ottawa. We want to focus on the billions of dollars of investments that are in front of us. Let's work to get the investments, the private sector investments that are in front of us across the line. Let's try to create good paying jobs in our communities. That's where our focus is right now. And, really having discussions about a hypothetical project that has no private sector proponent at this time, it actually distracts from all the good work we could be doing together.
Now, as the minister said, there is no proponent for a new pipeline, a new oil pipeline, that is, at this time. But Smith is hoping that will change if she signs this MOU with Ottawa. And a senior government official also says that some of the other considerations that are on the table here include changes to the industrial carbon pricing system and even possibly the removal of the industrial emissions cap, Ian.
And what's the reaction been on Parliament Hill?
Well, this has certainly been the biggest talker on Parliament Hill today, and the reaction varies depending on who you speak to. So the Conservative Party, many of those MPs are happy with this news. They want to see a new pipeline, a new oil pipeline from Alberta to BC's northern coast, but they say they don't want to see talks, so this MOU for them just doesn't cut it. Now, for other MPs, we are hearing skepticism, even amongst Liberals. Have a listen.
This is a national conversation that needs to happen, but most importantly, it needs to happen with the communities who live along that coast, because they're the ones who would be most affected by lifting that ban.
People in my community are proud of the coast, proud of our coastal economy, and committed to protecting it. That's the legacy of my predecessors in the riding. That's the legacy of many, many years of leadership in British Columbia, and that's what the people in my community want to see the government uphold.
The Haida Nation will never stand for it. British Columbians will never stand for it. They're not just barking up the wrong tree, they're barking up the wrong forest.
Now, a senior government official says Ottawa is open to approving a new oil pipeline, but Alberta has to do its homework first, and that includes consultation, the consultation that's required with First Nations. Now, Smith's office says that its Indigenous Relations Minister is speaking to coastal First Nations and even visiting those communities in the event that they can earn their support for a new pipeline if they create the conditions for one and, of course, find a proponent, Ian.
Olivia Stefanovich in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
A barge carrying cargo containers that was taking on water is now stable in the waters off BC's coast. It was damaged yesterday when the problems began. The Canadian Coast Guard says that the boat was going from Alaska to Seattle and the problem started near Bella Bella, British Columbia. The vessel has now been moved into a safe harbor. Transport Canada confirmed the barge is carrying refrigerated containers, dry goods, and diesel, but there are no reports of pollution or damage, though precautionary actions are being taken. Now, this comes on the heels of a deal between Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Sources say that Ottawa is weighing an exemption to a ban on oil tankers so that an oil pipeline can go through northwest British Columbia. Marilyn Slett is the elected chief councillor of the Heiltsuk Tribal Council. She's also president of the Coastal First Nations. That's an alliance of First Nations on the North Pacific Coast that's dedicated to improving quality of life for its citizens. And she joins us from here in Vancouver. Chief Slett, what's the latest you're hearing about the barge?
So we have some of our marine emergency response team operators out at the site right now. They've been there since the incident began. The freighter has been moved to a safe harbor, and it is close to some of our salmon-bearing streams, so we have a boom laid out as a precautionary measure.
So Transport Canada says there are no reports of pollution or damage caused by the barge. Does that ease your concerns?
Well, certainly it does, but we're not through this yet until the barge is out of the territory and into into a safer zone. So right now, we are on alert to make sure that nothing starts happening. I mean, it's out in the ocean in winter weather and strong currents. So we're definitely making sure that all areas are covered.
As we're talking to you, we're looking at some video from yesterday of the barge. And yes, there's the potential for problems when a barge, if a barge indeed does sink, which this one didn't. Much greater potential for trouble if it's an oil tanker. And as you know, sources say a memorandum of understanding between the Alberta government and Ottawa regarding a potential tanker ban exemption could soon be reached. Do you think that the tanker ban will remain in place?
Well, we certainly hope that it will, and we'll continue to advocate and lobby and fight for it to stay in place. And it's things like this that happen that really cause great concern of the incidents that can happen in our territories, and why it's so important to make sure that we have all measures in place to keep our ocean intact and healthy.
I'm sure you know this. Maybe people have said this to you directly, but there are a lot of people in the oil patch who desperately want a pipeline built out to the Pacific Ocean, and then, of course, that oil would have to move by tanker. And they would say that this is really, really important for the economy of Canada, particularly at a time when that economy is under threat from the United States. What do you say to that?
Well, we have lived on the coast since since millennia, and we've stewarded and taken care of where we live. And we don't do it just for us, but a lot of people rely upon a healthy ocean for livelihood here in British Columbia. And we would see that our interests also have to be weighed and considered in what we do here. We have a healthy, intact ocean, one of the largest temperate rainforest ocean beds in the world. And this is something that we've looked after and we've protected with partners like the federal government and British Columbia. And we would see that we need to continue this. We see this as important for our livelihood, for our way of life, and also for a sustainable economy here in British Columbia.
You certainly got some strong support today from the leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, but she, of course, is one MP and a party of one in the House. Have you had any conversations, and in particular, any meaningful conversations with the federal government on this?
Well, we have written to Prime Minister Carney and to Minister Hodgson, and we haven't had any meaningful dialogue between us, not without trying. So we'll continue to leave that door open and have these conversations. And certainly with Elizabeth Bay, we do appreciate the support and hope that the support from the Liberal caucus is still there to maintain the oil tanker moratorium.
Chief Marilyn Slett, elected Chief Councillor of the Heiltsuk Tribal Council, also President of the Coastal First Nations. Thank you very much.
Kayasaka.